All right. Well, I'm really excited today because today I have at my immediate disposal the entire trumpet section of the Las Vegas Philharmonic. And they've graciously agreed to do a little interview session here. And this is really fun and exciting because I've never done this with you guys before. I've played with you guys like a bunch of times and worked with you, but we haven't ever done something like this. So let me introduce everybody. So first we have Tom Wright, principal trumpet. Joseph Dirk, second trumpet. Do you go by Joe mostly or Joseph?
Joe.
Okay. And Lawrence Ransom the third on third trumpet.
How about
Esquire.
Do you go by Larry?
Larry?
Oh, did you say Esquire?
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. All right. So I'm going to start with some background questions because this always interests me and no one ever asks them. I would like to know how old each of you were when you first started trumpet, and who was your first teacher? Let's start with Tom.
Okay, so this is back in the day when California actually taught music in schools, and I was probably in fourth grade. Cecil Robinson was my first band director. He's an interesting character. I don't think he really knew much about a lot of instruments. He kind of did the Professor Harry Hill think method. If you sang it enough and emoted enough, it would come. But it sort of did. There was like several really good players. I mean, we were able to, and he would like take the arrangements and let us do what we wanted with them. And we actually had a Dixieland band in the fifth grade. And we rode on floats in the parades and played Dixieland stuff. We didn't know what we were doing. I guess it sounded okay. I don't know.
Wow.
But we, it was just like, he'd start like singing a vamp. Guys, gotta pick this up. So he started playing, and then we, so it was like, I was not afraid to experiment, above what was on the page. And then my first real trumpet instructor actually instilled a couple of good things before he got sent to prison, but that's another story.
This explains a lot, Tom.
Yeah.
A lot of background. It explains my behavior.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, he was an interesting character.
So who or how did you learn to read music? Did you was that just a gradual process after you started trumpet with the Dixieland stuff?
Yeah, I know it. I've met a lot of people that could read a lot better than I could at a time when I could read. I can't read anymore. But yeah, it didn't faze me. I mean, once you learn the math of, two quarter notes and a half note, two half notes and a whole note, it was just like, it was pretty easy. And then there was a couple of pretty well stocked music stores in my little teeny town that I grew up in Northern California. And every time I got $2, I'd go down and buy a couple of pieces of sheet music. And I sort of read all the stuff that, whatever, like, who can I turn to or whatever, about that, or Love Me Tender, whatever, about the sheet music. And I'd sort of look at it, but I sort of played it by what I heard the people do on the radio and TV.
Wow.
So I sort of, learned to interpret like Elvis Presley or whoever was singing the song, and then I kind of honed that down to where I was actually reading the notes. And it was just kind of fun. And I wanted to play guitar. And my mother went to the music store with me. There was this older gentleman, I forget his name. He taught my brother trumpet. And he had a music store, he had instruments, and he taught out of his house. And he said, "What do you want to play?" And I said, "Guitar." And my mom behind me is shaking her head no. And because she thought of the Beatles and Rolling Stones and didn't want to hear that, right? So he goes, "Well," she goes, "What about saxophone?" I said, I don't want to play saxophone. And then I said, "Well, I'll play trumpet like my brother Tim." And he goes, "Okay." She goes, "Yeah, that's good." So they got the trumpet for me and gave me a Belden band builder book or whatever it was. And got home. It was like the end of school year. So I started practicing. And about the second week of trumpet land, my mom would probably wish that I'd taken up guitar, because I get up in the morning at 8 o'clock and I start blowing, and I wouldn't stop blowing until like 10 o'clock at night. And she goes, "Can you shut up?" You know, it's like most people are going like, "Can you practice?" And my mom's telling me to shut up, which probably gave me some good endurance for later on in life, but probably ruined my embouchure forever.
Wow, that is an amazing story. Okay, but two questions I have now. Two follow-ups there. Which is what town in Northern California is this?
Fairfield.
Where is that?
It's halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento.
Ah, okay.
And then near the Napa Valley and Vallejo or Vallejo, however you want to pronounce it.
Right.
So it was like, 45 minutes into the city either way.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Access to a lot of when best music was a big thing, and go down there and try instruments out and stuff. My wife studied with the San Francisco principal clarinetist in the San Francisco Symphony when she was in high school. So it was access to a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
But we lived in a small town where you could leave the doors unlocked.
Wow. Okay, so now, if you can't answer this, that's okay. But why did your trumpet teacher get sent to prison?
Yeah.
He owned a music store, and he was into photography.
Oh, family version, Tom. Family version.
So he was taking some portraiture that wasn't, maybe person wasn't of age.
Wow. And you were this little kid studying with him?
Oh yeah.
Oh my word, that's terrifying.
And he was hilarious. I mean, he was like the world's best friend, right? He had a 69 El Camino with a 454 V8 in there, all tricked out. And when I was 14, he was playing in the Vallejo Symphony, and he said, "We need a third trumpet. You want to come?" I'm going, "Yeah." So the first thing I played was Finlandia, and it said in A trumpet. I said, "Mr. Radcliffe, what does that mean?" He goes, "It means you pull your slide all the way out."
Because we're on B flat.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that's how I played A trumpet for a long time. I had no idea. It's like A trumpet, pull it all the way out and just play.
I thought that's how you do play A music.
Well, it's easier sometimes, but yeah. So and then he lost his music store and was selling Fords. So we go to Denny's on the way home after the rehearsals, and we stop, and he put his business card in the special today. So like people open up the menu and there's, Chet Monez Ford.
All right, I'll try that as my next technique.
Yeah, drum up business that way.
Okay, Joe. All right, we got to move on to Joe though.
All right.
What's your, how old were you, and who was your first teacher, and how did it all start with you?
Well, so I would have to say, I mean, I had to have been 10, maybe 9. Here's the thing. My grandfather, I was born and raised in Las Vegas. My grandfather actually had a big band that he would, different, it wasn't always a big band, different combinations of various people and sometimes little combos. So I could never decide what I wanted to play. I wanted to play sax and clarinet, drums, and piano, and I mean, everything that was there. And it finally settled on trumpet. And actually my grandfather played trumpet. So he was really my first teacher. So in fact, some of I don't have any funny stories like Tom, or maybe it's funny, but, but like one of my first memories with his band was actually, he had booked a New Year's Eve gig. And now keep in mind, the band, they played, but he was, his day job, right? He was a high school history teacher. And, he had booked the New Year's Eve gig for this full big band, and then something fell through. And rather than my grandfather just telling the guys, "Sorry, we're off," he piled the entire big band onto his little patio in the back of his house, and paid all these guys to show up. And they just had like a big 3-hour jam on his back patio. And so, and the guys in the band were some guys, like Pat Bowen was on drums. It was one of his first gigs in town when he moved here, when we were all a lot younger. And a bunch of trombone players like Walt Bainig, and I mean, just like all these guys that have been sort of Las Vegas staples. Apparently, I met them all when I was but a wee lad, And so yeah, my grandfather taught me how to make all the noise anyway, and all the fingerings, and we'd practice Harry James solos and Rafael Mendez, that Virgin of Macarena,
So were you like Tom then? The first genre, if you will, that you played was big band stuff?
Yeah, I would have to say so, but it was like older big band. It wasn't, it was all stuff that was popular when my grandfather was like a young man,
Right.
because that was he was really into it, so lots of, lots of, all the famous, Harry James solos and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I probably couldn't even play half of them now, or remember them anyway, I should say.
Wow.
Or maybe it would come flooding back to me, but yeah, so he was my first teacher. And really, I would say my only teacher until, so I mean, like I had band directors, right? And I went to the local performing arts magnet school where I met Ed Jackson, and I don't know if a lot of your people will know, but Chris Castellanos, was a horn player, who now is renowned far and wide for his French horn abilities. Yes. And so I didn't have an official teacher, right? Other than Ed Jackson would always push us to just obviously do our best. And Chris, though, we would hang out all the time in high school, and we'd go hang out at his house, and we didn't do normal teenage boy stuff. We'd sit around trying to like transcribe Mahler trumpet parts and horn parts, or playing fanfare for the common man with whatever recording he could find, and all of this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was sort of like, I didn't want to let my buddy down and sound like garbage, so I just practiced a lot, and luckily didn't learn any incredibly bad habits.
That is great. I love
Right.
it.
Yeah. And then I finally, in my senior year in high school, the trumpet teacher at UNLV, actually, his name was Walt Blanton. He took me under his wings because he said, you sound pretty good. who are you taking lessons with? And I didn't have an answer. So yeah, I mean, that's that. So I had my grandfather, nobody, and then Walt Blanton at the tail end, before college. So
that's really interesting because well, probably it's
peer pressure, maybe.
Yeah,
it was my second trumpet teacher.
And if you hadn't met Chris Castellanos, maybe nothing would have happened.
You never know. I mean, I always say, because I'm older and have kids now, if I hadn't met my wife, Chris Castellanos, and Ed Jackson, I might be selling cars or being homeless. I mean, who knows? Those guys, they were they had very kind of like high expectations, and I didn't want to let any three of them down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, Larry, what about you? What's your story?
Well, it's rather, I feel like almost inadequate compared to these guys. They were so enwrapped in me. I started in 9th grade, and it was just one of those, like, you show up in a room and all the instruments are on a table.
9th grade?
No, sorry, 9 years old.
Oh, 9 years old. That
yeah, but all the instruments are on a table, and I walked up to the trumpet, picked it up. They said, go. I did that, and I said, sure, I'll play this one. That sounds good. And I had my dad, nobody in my family is musically inclined at all. Nobody can play anything, can sing. Not even in the shower do they attempt. It's that bad. And so I didn't have any kind of influence right off the bat. My dad bought me an old beat up Bundy for my first trumpet. And he said, look, I'll get you a nicer one if you get first chair. And I said, well, I'm going to need some private lessons. So I studied for 1 year with a guy named Jim Schwartz down in Tucson, Arizona. And he got me first chair. And so I got like a medium Yamaha to start off with, like an intermediate model Yamaha. And that was my first kind of nice trumpet to get going. But from then on, it was pretty much my own deal. And I was just Mr. Yes Man at school. Like, hey, can you play for this? Yep. Can you play for that? Yep. Can you play for this thing? Yep. Are you interested in learning about? Yep. Whatever it was, I just said yes, and let's go. And I unfortunately developed a bunch of bad habits all the way through high school. Started playing completely incorrectly, bad embouchure.
Is that because you didn't have like a private trumpet teacher? Is that
there was no good influence, and the only other influences I had were really bad trumpet players at the school. And so when I got to college, when I'd finally decided, I wanted to go into music, Walt Blanton, who taught Joe, senior year, ended up being my trumpet teacher in college here at UNLV, and he made me start all over again in college. So this like all-state type kid in high school who had taught himself to play but had some bad habits, and I went back to relearning from the beginning all the way down to elementary school level and my freshman year in college, and Walt got me through that in about 3 years before I actually won the audition for the Philharmonic, I think in my third or fourth year of college.
That is amazing. So did you have to like totally change your entire embouchure and like go back so you sound like a fourth grader again?
Everything. Literally, I would go into like rep class in college, and my assignment for the week was play Arbin 11. Like that was it.
Wow.
And survive it. Like get through it. You know, that was kind of my assignment for the week, and the guys would help me out. But you know, the beautiful thing about it is, I guess you'd say my first major influences were Walt and the guys in the studio here at UNLV, and they were nothing but supportive, like encouraging. They never looked at, I never got a bad, you know, oh, you suck. I never got anything like that. It was always like, dude, you sound great. Nice job. Keep it up. You know, and I
you didn't get any of that until you started playing in the Phil with Joe.
Well, yeah. Get out to the professional world. That's when everybody starts treating you like a piece of dog. But you know, in college, we're all on the same team, so we're good.
So wait, I have to ask you this: because that takes incredible patience and perseverance to go through that type of embouchure change for 3 years to build back up. So were you getting pressure from the ensemble conductors to play, you know, high parts and then at least go back to use your old embouchure while you're transitioning? I mean, that I have seen students who just felt so much pressure to play their parts in the ensembles that they didn't have the patience to go through that whole change.
You know, I got lucky. Joe talked about his class at the academy there, the Performing Arts Magnet. He was a year behind me. So here I showed up, and there was a pretty strong class of trumpet players that were kind of on the way out. And then all these new guys like Joe started coming into the class at UNLV. And they never were hurting for good trumpet players to pressure me about any of that stuff. So I was literally like the guppy minnow in a gigantic pond of amazing trumpet players. And so great stuff to listen to, some great notions of what good trumpet playing actually sounded like. And the beautiful thing about Walt Blanton as a teacher was he never sowed a seed of doubt in anything he talked about. So he would just tell you, this is what you're going to do this week. You never got a hint that was a struggle or that was going to be a hard thing. It was just go work on this. And I always had this like endless faith that it was going to be just fine.
Wow. That's
so that way. It was kind of a cool thing.
I think that people that go through, trumpeters anyway, that go through that type of embouchure restructuring where you've got to go back to square one and then you make it and you succeed, that is, to me, that's better than any other natural. Like I just had a completely natural embouchure. I never had to go through anything, total natural. And I have so much respect for people who had to do the whole restructuring. And Tom Hooten talks about having to totally go back to square one with his embouchure in college. And it's just amazing when people do that because it just takes, like I said, so much perseverance and so much patience. That's amazing, Larry. I didn't know that about you. That's really cool. That's great. Okay, so now you two, Larry and Joe, you went to UNLV for undergrad. Tom, what did you do?
It was called California State University Hayward at the time.
Okay.
Now it's called Cal State East Bay. I don't know what the restructuring is. And it was a trumpet professor there was Marvin Nelson, who was the principal trumpet in the Oakland Symphony. And we had kind of a love-hate relationship because he had a student, and I can't think of the kid's name, great player. He ended up winning Marvin's job in the Oakland Symphony as principal trumpet. And I think because Marvin kind of wanted that to happen because he was kind of getting old. But I came in and I could play fairly well. And I don't think that fit into his idea book, what was supposed to happen. And that was okay. And then I could only do my lessons with Marvin at 8 a.m. on Monday mornings. And I kept telling him, dude, I'm doing Latin casuals all weekend long. I can't play Monday mornings at 8 a.m. My face was still like swollen to Tuesday, you know. It's like, that's the only time I've got for you, son. You better prepare. And then he had like a Charlier book. He pulled up like number 2, says, play this. And I going like, wow, you know, it's really kind of hard. I'm kind of stiff. How do you play it? And he picks up his horn and goes, like that. And I'd go like, well, that doesn't do me a lot of good, you know.
Bob, it's so easy. Why couldn't you pick it up after that?
Yeah.
You probably could have played it 2 octaves higher than it was written.
Yeah, probably like the nasty or who's those 2 guys out of North Texas that play the Tasty Pros?
Tasty Pros, right? Yes.
I don't know. It was bizarre. I mean, it was just like, and what I should have done, and Marvin even told me to do this, is Laurie McGaw. He was like, I think he might have been principal or second trumpet with the San Francisco Ballet or Opera. I forget now. That's way long time ago. And he said, you should study with Laurie. And I'm thinking like, I don't want to study with Laurie. And I was stupid. I should have studied with Laurie. I probably would have gotten something out of it. Laurie was also a game inventor. And evidently the big thing was like when they were playing the ballets or operas or whatever, I forget what he was doing there. He'd come up with a new game, like, you know, Mousetrap or whatever kind of a game. And they'd have the band people play it on the breaks. And then he'd submit it to Hasbro.
Wow.
So I don't know how many games out there are by Laurie McGaw, but
well, you know what? That probably supported his trumpet playing better than his
game. Yeah. I don't think they made a whole bunch of money back then. In those days.
Wow.
Especially living in San Francisco. But
yeah, that's for sure. Wow.
But it was kind of funny because like the Mr. Sprung, the French horn guy, and Dan Livesey, the trombone people, they kept going like, wow, you sound great. And then, you know, like when Marv listened to me play, he stuck me in the worst quintet for my chamber group. And Dan Livesey came in to do some coaching, and we started to play this song. We got like 8 bars into this song, and he stopped the group and says, can I see you outside? And I'm thinking, oh, here I'm going to get kicked out of school, right? He goes, what are you doing in this group? I said, well, that's what I was told the places. You should not be here. Just go back, finish the rehearsal. I'll get you moved. So it was, I don't know if Marv had a thing where if he didn't teach you that he couldn't be good. I kind of, you know, kind of thinking that might be what was going on. And then the other thing that was kind of funny, which I should have left Cal State Hayward, was the first semester, he did the Haydn for faculty recital. And I think after playing a Latin casual, I could have done a better job. And then in the lesson, I said to Marv, I said, hey, so would you do a couple Latin casuals before the recital? And he goes, oh no, I was buying a Mustang for my son. You know, I was test driving it. I didn't have time to warm up. And I said, that's not a very good excuse, Marv, because that would always tell me if I said, I was playing too much this weekend. That's not a very good excuse. So I said, not a very good excuse, Marv.
Oh my word.
So I don't know. I mean, I was kind of stupid, I guess. And I didn't do myself any good by just sitting
I'm surprised you didn't get kicked out.
Yeah, well, I almost did for a different reason, but
okay, well, that's not good.
I'm right. Winning over hearts and minds everywhere he goes.
Well, compared to all of you, my story is boring because both my parents were horn players, and so you would think I would have naturally played horn, but in my head, from the earliest conscious moment, I knew I was going to play trumpet, and that was it. And so when I was 9, which seems like a little theme here, but not many people start that young anymore, it seems like. But one summer, I just picked up a cornet that was lying around the house. We were at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp because my father taught horn there every summer. And I was just, a kid. I hadn't started an instrument yet. And we all stayed in trailers. Every family stayed in a trailer there back in those days. And so we were in a trailer, and it was a hot summer afternoon. I was sitting on the back door. I was, so short my legs didn't touch the ground, and there were no steps. So I'm just sitting there, my legs are swinging because the door is open, and I picked up a cornet, and no one I was thinking about this yesterday. No one ever told me how to form an embouchure. I just picked it up and started to play. And my first thing that I did was figure out how to play a C scale. I'd played piano since I was 5, so I knew stuff like that and notes, but I'd never figured anything out on trumpet or played it. And my first thing was, I remember figuring out how to play D and figuring out that that was 1 and 3 and feeling like I just solved the world's most mathematical complexity. It was like victory. And I played the whole
Code
octave
breaker.
scale. Yes. And I played the C scale, the C octave, and I just took it for granted. And that was it. Trumpet was going to be it. But I started at cornet. I didn't even play trumpet, an actual trumpet, until I graduated from high school. It was cornet, which is really weird and unusual. Did you guys all start in trumpet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Schools. My school, everyone. It was the big thing that everyone played cornets, and we all had everyone. There were tons of school cornets, but there weren't school trumpets. I don't know how that happened. I don't know why.
That's like traditional band music where it was actually cornet parts and trumpet parts kind of a thing.
Right, but we didn't have any trumpets, and we only had a band, so we had no orchestra program in our schools or anything like that. So yeah.
Whoever bought the instruments was from England.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There was a couple of cornet players in my high school growing up. Always. At
Really?
least
Yeah,
two. Yeah.
And
like
did,
one or two kids.
Yeah.
did they feel ostracized because they were on cornet and you guys are all on trumpet?
No, I think it was more the other way around. Like these were the cool guys that had some weird, funky instrument, and we all
Oh.
wrong.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Well, it was beneficial for me to play cornet because my father actually taught me how to play trumpet. He plays trumpet, so he was my first teacher, kind of like you, Larry, your grandfather. But then my father started teaching horn at a music camp in Vermont, where I got to study with Jimmy Burke, very famous cornet
Yeah.
virtuoso from the old cornet schools, who played with the Edwin Franco Goldman Band for 28 years. He was their cornet soloist. He won that job at 18, and he played with them for 28 years. So I got those were my big formational lessons were with him. So that was really interesting. Okay, well, moving on though, I want to know so you guys have been in Vegas for quite a while. I've only been there for 7 years, so I feel like I'm still a newbie. So I want to know, in your opinion, what is the best kept secret about Vegas that other people coming in don't know?
In general, or musically, or
In
like
general, it doesn't have to be music. Because people always, think. I found that everyone goes, "Oh, the Strip," and then they think all Vegas is the Strip, and that's it, and there's really nothing else. And I have found that not really to be true.
No, I probably would say the city outside of the Strip most of the time. I've actually been on airplanes and talking to people, and they get surprised that people actually live here. They have
Wow.
yeah, that there's 2 million people here. You know what I mean? It's no concept whatsoever. They think it's all tourists. So, so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we get there's a lot of people in Vegas that say there's no culture here, and there's a lot of people from that. I think there's plenty if you look hard,
Mm-hmm.
and there that want to have some culture. So come bring it.
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
think the bad thing about culture here is David Itkin was a conductor with the Philharmonic a while back, and he kind of put it correctly. He says like when he was conducting in Arkansas, they bring in like Kenny Loggins to do a concert, or Melissa Manchester, stuff like that. And he said, you can't do that here because they're on the Strip 7 days a week. You can't compete with the Strip. And then they can have fireworks blowing up on the stage and people flying through the ceilings and stuff like that. He says, but we're just sitting at the Smith Center playing a concert. He says, it's just not the same. It's like, you can't compete with the extravaganzas going on all the time. And the other thing I noticed, you can't compete with a slot machine. People would rather go to a bar, get a drink and put quarters in the machine than come and see a concert. It's just not, it's kind of funny that the interest isn't there for a lot of people because in Vallejo, the Vallejo Symphony, the town was 80,000 people. And we did as many concerts there when I was 14 as the Phil does now.
Wow.
And they filled it was like a 2,000 seat auditorium, and they filled it every time.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and Napa Symphony, I played with them, and they did maybe a few less than Vallejo, but they filled it. It's like, and then you hear the whole like the I-5 Philharmonic, which is like Modesto, Bakersfield, Stockton, Sacramento. They're all doing concerts. They're all doing anywhere from 5 to 10 concerts, and these towns are not that big.
Right.
A year they're doing 5 or 10 concerts a year. The towns aren't that big, but they're having an audience, and a lot of them are paying pretty well. It's just like, and you get Vegas, over 2 million people, and you can hardly get 1,500 people into a concert.
Well, yeah. I know this is not, I think we're getting a little off from what you originally asked, but I'm going to partially agree with Tom. I think it is hard to compete sometimes with, Cirque, who's got people diving 4 stories into what you thought was a solid stage, and now it's a pool. And, I mean, who knows? Any number of DJs or other bands or, Beatles tributes this, or, I mean, Journey was at the Aladdin a month ago, right? But here's the thing. If you program it right, they will come, right? So we played a concert just last weekend, Beethoven 9. Everybody loves Beethoven 9. It was the first sold out show at the Smith Center in 3 years. Now, I mean, that sounds maybe more impressive than it is, because I'm sure we were shut down for a big chunk of that 3 years. But I think, not to get too off topic, but I think as far as the culture, I think the reason we have a problem is because, number one, it's a little hard to compete with all that going on the Strip. But number two, people have this preconceived notion of what culture is. I mean, we did a John Williams concert a couple of years ago before the shutdown, and they sold out 2 of them. They would play the stuff people want to hear, and they will come.
I think I was on that. I was on that John Williams concert with you guys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
that was really fun. And was that the last sold out one?
Yes.
Wait, say that again, Larry. I missed it.
He conducting in the Darth Vader outfit. Lightsaber. It was amazing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they've had others since. It always shocks me. It often shocks me what sells out, because it's all valid. This is not like a commentary on any specific type of music, but sometimes he'll program some random Haydn symphony and some random Mozart symphony, and I go in thinking, well, it's cool, I get to play my rotary valve trumpet, but there's going to be 10 people in the audience, and it'll be, the majority of it'll be sold out. So, it's
wow.
There is no telling sometimes what's going to bring, people in. So
it's like household names. If they know the name of the symphony, they're likely to come.
Yes.
As opposed to we're playing symphony number 37. Well, I don't know that. I'm not going to go.
Right. Yeah. And if they're doing all John Williams, that's going to be sold out. Beethoven 9, that's going to be sold out.
And Mahler 2 is sold out.
Oh, really?
That was kind of funny, but I guess people, Mahler, so they want to come. It's kind of odd.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that to be, but then you got 100 people in the choir and 100 people on stage, so you got at least 400 people coming to see that.
I think the history of the town makes a big difference too. I mean, you look at things like LA and San Francisco and big port towns where there's been large populations for a very, very long time. Yep. There's lots of culture that's been rooted there for 100 plus years, and there's foundations funding a lot of it. There's a lot of that stuff going on. A town like Vegas never had a history like that. Like Joe and I, we're in business together, and we had a trip back to Philadelphia last year. And you go down to Philadelphia, and everywhere you turn, there's like a 200-year-old building and a cemetery of a founding father or something else like that happening there.
Or the Philadelphia Art Museum, the Rocky one, right?
Yeah.
I went in there. It was like a freaking ghost town, but it was amazing, some of the stuff they had. But I mean, I guess the point is that museum's been there for a long time. They have these foundations, like Larry was saying, where if it's built in from the beginning, then maybe you don't have to try as hard, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Philly.
When there's in that support, the orchestra can feel an orchestra or a ballet or an opera can feel comfortable experimenting and trying new things and building the culture, trying new things. Like here, we're trying to build that kind of culture here, and we're on the ground floor of it. So you got to get the people in the door, and then we can start to beginning to experiment, like Joe was saying. But I think that's probably where Vegas is it's just, we're young for a city compared to some of those that have big name orchestras. It's going to take us a minute to get there. But I think the interest is here if we do it right.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. My daughter did her DMA at Temple, so we went, and her master's. So we went to Philly. I go to Philly still every summer. I've been doing it for years. And that place just that place grew out of so much history. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Compared to Vegas, which just kind of materialized out of thin air in the middle of the total desert. I mean, the fact that it exists at all is miraculous. So, yeah. And it is so young in comparison. But I every time I learn more facts about Vegas, it's just like, yes, you fly in and you go, all of a sudden there's this city. Where did it come from? How did this thing materialize? Like it got beamed in from outer space. It's one of those crazy places that exist in the universe.
Thanks to Bugsy Siegel.
Right.
I mean, once they legalized gambling, Vegas was like a one-horse town. Train stop was what it was. And so they would switch, go in the southern route or the west coast route or whatever. That's where the trains would all switch around at Union Station downtown. And when they legalized gambling, then that's when it took off. Same thing like in Reno, became a big divorce capital. Because you go to Reno and stay at a resort and divorced.
So that's actually, if we wanted to get back to that best kept secret thing, I don't know that it's a real big secret for people that don't know, but there's a state park. Actually, I don't think it's a state park anymore, but called Tule Springs, right out up in the northwest part of town. That is exactly what Tom is talking about. If you go there, it's like an old, they called it a divorce ranch. There's some natural springs with some lakes, and they had like a skeet range and horse stables and like fishing ponds and boat rides and swimming pools. And people would move to Nevada, Las Vegas for 30 days so they could become Nevada residents so they could get a divorce and go home.
Oh my word.
But okay, that park is still there with all these really old buildings, and like it's just amazing to go up there, and it's close enough to the mountains that sometimes you see animals that you're surprised to see, in the middle of the desert, and so we're all over the place, but that's my hidden secret, maybe.
All right. Well, speaking of Nevada, because the first thing that blew me away also were the intensely hot summers. So everyone knows how hot it is in Vegas, but what's your key to surviving the months of intense heat? Or do you not even notice it at this point? Joe, you're such a Vegas native. Maybe it doesn't even faze you.
You just throw all your clothes in the freezer when you go to bed at night, and then No, look, I hate it. Okay, I mean, like I met my wife here. I've got 4 kids. I'm in the symphony. I have like everything about my life is here. So I'm probably never going to be able to move. But when it's 118, you just want to die. Okay. I mean, there is like, I don't want to hear it, but it's a dry heat or anything. It's like the sun is trying to rip the flesh from your bones. Okay. With the, so
just like that I want to give you an Oscar for this. This is a very dramatic performance that's happening here, Joe. This is great.
No, look, you know what? I as much as I hate it, I don't know that you really can say it's any worse than if you lived in Fargo, North Dakota, right? I mean, it's just the opposite. I'm sure when I first started the company I work with Larry, the partnership we have, they offered me a job in Fargo. And at the time, it must have been before that movie came out or something, because you would Google Fargo, North Dakota, and the first thing that would show up is a guy with a coffee pot and the snow, and he would throw it in the air and it would just poof into this like cloud of ice and snow. And to me, that's like that's just as bad. So I don't know, you just deal with it. You like if you were someplace crazy cold, you run from air conditioning to air conditioning, you jump in any pool or lake or anything you can find every chance you get,
Well, okay, so Go ahead,
That's
Larry.
about Las Vegas is literally nothing has ever been built here without an AC unit.
Ah,
And
Yes.
you're never more than about 30 seconds from one. So if you are in the heat, you're not stuck there very long. Every building, car, whatever is freezing cold the minute you get into it because those things are running all the time. And so, it's hot outside, but you're never there for very long. And you can get out of that heat pretty quick.
and another big difference, because I'm an Northeast Coast native. That's where I grew up. And the thing about Vegas summers is nothing interferes with the conditions of the road. So you're always going to have nice dry roads, unless you've got one of those freak downpours, but that doesn't happen that often. But other than that, the conditions are always very good, which is nice.
Or weather that requires you to actually work to leave your home. Like you have to
Yeah.
move stuff.
I've never had to shovel the sunshine out of my driveway.
Yeah. Travel
Good
back
point.
every once in a while, but that's about it.
Okay, so we're going to move to talk shop now, specifically with trumpets. So what I want to know is, during the whole 2-year pandemic, what did you guys do to try to keep your chops up? Because I've never been so out of shape ever, and I couldn't play for any pregnancy because I got very ill. So every pregnancy, I was out of commission for 9 months. But the pandemic was much worse because it was like no playing anywhere for 2 years. So what did you guys do? What did you do, Tom?
So at first I was like Mr. Dutiful. I grabbed my son and we practiced. We played every Arbenz duet. We played every Arbenz solo, all the characteristics, played the whole Arbenz book, played the whole Schlossberg book.
Wow.
Started taking lessons with Jeff Pirtle out of North Carolina, doing the Claude Gordon systematic approach to super high notes and loudness stuff. And after about 6 months of that, I didn't care anymore.
I know.
I put the horn in the case and I thought, well, if anything happens, there'll be enough notice for me to try to get some chops back. And I just gave up. I just stopped playing. It was just like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm practicing for what? And probably was not a good thing for my son's psyche to see me just kind of quit. But it wasn't the first time I quit, but this time was recent. But I have practiced a lot when things started picking up again. I do not feel like I have my chops like I had them before it ended. It just is not enough consistent playing, and I don't care how much you practice. And I don't want to say this to ruin any people's ideas of practicing. I think it's worthless unless you're playing in an ensemble, because it ain't the same.
Just practicing in your own.
Yeah, you're not dealing with other people's time and rhythm and intonation, interpretation and dynamics, and you play, and when you get to a part where you can't play, you stop. And in a real situation, that doesn't happen. You have to persevere, and it's not the same. And you don't realize if you're in a room like I'm in, like it's 10 by 10, it's not the same as playing in the Smith Center.
Right.
Yeah, I go to the first concert we did at the Smith Center. I went to play. It felt like everything, and someone ripped all my lungs out on the first note because I couldn't fill the horn up. I couldn't hear it bounce back from the wall. And I'm going like, oh, geez, this is going to be brutal. And Joe and I did Beethoven Seventh, and that was, I've played that before and didn't care. It was nothing. And I was like dying. I thought, wow, this is like too much. I turned to Joe and said, I should have called Larry in as an associate principal, because the last 4 pages is high B. Does this ever going to end? It's like pointless.
I know, Tom. I was basically the same thing. First 6 months, I had all these lofty ideas. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I made a bunch of recordings with my daughter. We tried to do one every week. And put them on my YouTube channel. But after about 6 months, I just lost my will to do anything. It's just like, the rest of the world does not understand how the trumpet, I'm going to talk about trumpet because we're trumpeters, but that is our mode of communication. That's our language. And we basically could not communicate with the world for 2 years because our language was taken away from us. We couldn't do that. And it was heart-wrenching, and people don't understand the heart-wrenching quality of it. It's trumpet playing. It's not like, I mean, if you're a writer, you can keep writing. I think a lot of people, probably singers, I'm sure, felt the exact same thing if you were a vocalist, because they got hit murderously hard too. But yeah, it was just murder. And Tom, I'm still trying to recover and get back in shape. I've been practicing pretty consistently now for several months, and I know I'm still not at that point that I was before. It's murder. 2 years off is just a killer.
Yeah, I mean, we did. Joe and Larry didn't do this when he was somewhere vacationing, but we did the Star Trek convention. It was like the first gig after
that was rough.
Okay, and I developed this before the pandemic, before Showstoppers. I was doing that and playing other things. I did a lot of stuff when they still had bands at Caesars and Desert Inn, when those hotels still existed. And I developed what was called the 3-day embouchure. So Friday afternoon was a rehearsal. Friday night was 2 shows. Saturday was 2 shows, and that was it. So you did a rehearsal and 4 shows. So Thursday, I picked my horn up, do some arpeggios and lip flexibility things, play a couple of notes, just enough to get the scab to come off my lips, and then I go in the Friday and play. If the show got extended to do another show on Sunday, I would fold. I could not get there. Wow. So that's kind of what the Star Trek was. It was every high part from all the Star Trek stuff, and a bunch of high E's and stuff endlessly, like Beethoven's 7th thing. But I got through it. But then I couldn't play for like a week and a half afterwards. It's just like, you get your air going, you get some sort of chops going, and then you just compress and go and just give it all you have. And, I could have probably used my mouthpiece to make cookies on my face, cut out little patterns. But, it was insane,
Yeah.
And it was fun. It's great. I was thinking, you're playing with this orchestra, and we're really going for it. And it's a good group doing good stuff. And then who was the conductor? That was the guy who wrote Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space J. McCarthy or something.
McCarthy, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Deep Space Nine as its opening solo, or no, it's opening whatever it is.
That's a solo, yeah.
And so right before the gig, he walks over and says, "Hey, I'm going to point at you, and you stand up and play the theme." And I what?
That's good.
Yeah, all by himself in front of. Look, I feel like I'm going to interrupt you. He didn't do a good job setting the scene, you guys. The Star Trek convention they open up all the doors in the Rio Convention Center and set up chairs as far back as you can see. So first of all, even in a normal circumstance, there is just a crap ton of people there. But not only is there a crap ton of people at this event, every single one of them is in a Starfleet uniform or has Borg costume or Klingon makeup, and they all know.
You are lucky that I wasn't there.
Oh, let me tell you.
I'm a big Trekkie. I love Star Trek. I would have gone.
Listen, so imagine like 4,000, 5,000 people that know everything about everything that he's going to play, know this music better than we do, even though we've played this gig for many years. And it's like, and I say this with love and affection, it's a rock concert for nerds, okay? Yes. And McCarthy looks at Tom, says, "I need you to stand up after not playing for however many years it's been now, or how many ever years it felt, and says, I want you to play this thing all the way through the high D, perfectly, all by yourself, after sitting there midway through the concert after you're already tired, so that he can turn around and explain the melody to people, And so Tom is a rock star. I don't know that I would have maybe told him no thanks.
And Tom, you had no idea until you started doing the show that they were going to ask you to do that?
No idea till the show.
Yeah, it was before the show, and he walks back and tells him he's going to do it.
Not only did we play the show, which was like 2.5 hours long, we did like a 3-hour rehearsal earlier that
same day. Yeah.
And played all this stuff. And then that night, he comes up to me as I'm standing waiting to go on. He goes, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to point at you."
Oh, my word.
You're like, I'm going to point back.
Yeah.
I said, is that my cue to get up and leave? You know?
Oh, that's unbelievable. So how did it go? Did it go pretty well?
I guess.
He nailed it. Tom's modest. He nailed it. It was glorious.
Did the Trekkies all come up and talk to you afterwards?
No.
Oh.
No.
They always try.
Yeah.
Tom's a rock star like that. I got a story if I don't mind interjecting.
Yeah, go right ahead.
We had a Christmas concert. This is many, many years ago. Tom broke his wrist like the week of the Christmas concert.
Oh yeah.
Literally broke his wrist. And he's in this cast kind of thing. And I call him up because I'm not really even needed on that particular concert, if I can remember. I had very little to do. And I said, dude, do you want me to, play something for you? He had a big Piccolo solo, like maybe I could help out on it in some way. He goes, no, I got it. So literally the day he broke his wrist, he like shows up and it's his right
splint.
Oh, it's his right hand?
Whole thing. And he rehearses with the orchestra on the Piccolo solo and nails the ever-loving snot out of it. Played the whole thing. I mean, Tom is like nerves of steel when it this stuff. So yeah, you never know the fun stories that come out of all this, but you get blown.
It's the Hayward years. They just turned you into solid iron, Tom.
What?
It's Ray Alexander. He was when I first joined the Tropicana band. He told me, he says, "Are you a lead trumpet player?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Because you can still feel your lips, can't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Until you bite every single nerve ending out of your bottom lip to where you can't feel anything, you can't play lead."
Wow.
So I used the Ray Alexander method to get through all that. So I don't feel the pain.
I'm so glad.
Oh my word. There's so much wrong with that statement. I can't believe it. Unbelievable. All right. Well, moving on. Unless that one of you, Larry or Tom, you wanted to talk about Larry or Joe, you wanted to talk about how you stayed in shape during the pandemic. What did you do?
Well,
I tried I practiced because we had to work from home for at least a few months anyway.
Yeah.
And I tried to practice diligently. I stopped. My warm-up got shorter and shorter and shorter, and I would just play through etudes after etudes. But the problem, like Tom said, is if you're not playing in an ensemble, you're not holding yourself to like a regimented metronomic time or some other person's version of the time. So my breath started getting slower and longer and less deep. And by about 2 months into it, I was struggling to play anything. So I just threw it in the case for about a month, forgot how to play. And when we went back to work, I started practicing in the office where it was a little bit different. And I had a very different setup. And that I actually learned probably the biggest lesson of my career during the pandemic about how to practice so you don't get into that situation again, because nothing had ever forced me to be there before.
So what's the thing you learned then?
Yeah, just how to practice differently. I no longer practice just like reading or, I everything is according to a metronomic time now. I was never diligent about that, but something has to force you to breathe in time, because if your breath is going to just die. It's going to die. Everything goes with it,
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Joe, what about you?
I don't really
Stay in shape.
Well, I don't know.
Joe doesn't practice at all.
Here's the thing. I've been lucky, maybe because, number one, I'm definitely lucky that I didn't develop crazy bad habits in all that time that I was like punishing myself learning how to play the trumpet without a teacher. Okay. Yeah. Number two, because of that, though, I feel like which would also make me a lousy teacher. I am fairly, this might sound weird saying it about myself, but I feel like I'm fairly natural player in that I kind of know how it feels when I'm playing well. And so I just try to make sure I always feel that way. As far as structured practices and stuff, it was the same as these guys. We started off, we did some stuff for the symphony, some recordings. They had me play with that Gottfried Reicha, Oblason thing, and we recorded it and for them to use. And I don't know, whatever. And it started off great, and then it sort of died off. But lucky maybe for me because it's not like crazy organized and strict sort of practice, but all four of my kids play instruments. So I was working on, not for my own benefit, although it totally did benefit me, you know, long tones and lip flexibility things with my sons who both play horn. And then, you know, as far as endurance and keeping my range moderately okay, my daughter plays violin. And so I'd bust out the C trumpet or the rotary C trumpet. So it's even more air, more hard, everything, and practice through her like violin etudes and solos with her. So I don't think that if I had been left to my own devices, I would have just probably put it in the case for a bit. I mean, too, but you know, shit happens. Hopefully that'll be the last time we have something like that for another 100 years.
Yes.
Right. But I think you just got to figure out how to do it one way or the other. So, I mean, I didn't practice trumpet stuff. I just kind of helped the kids with their band auditions and their tests that they were going to have. And luckily that was enough for the most part. I mean, the endurance thing is always going to be a challenge until we're playing as much as we were before, but.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Let's hope that we never have. Let's hope that this pandemic is getting squelched for good, because I still don't feel 100% confident that it's done completely, but hopefully it is. But
I don't think it's ever going to leave. I think it's just going to end up being like the flu and, you know, be around from now
they're just going to put another thing in your flu shot from now on. I can't see how it doesn't do that.
Right.
So.
Exactly. All right. Now I've got a question for you guys, because you guys all do Flugel. I had a teacher tell me that playing a lot of Flugel will weaken your embouchure. That if you did that a lot, it's actually going to weaken. It's not like all the other trumpets strengthen. Piccolo strengthens it. C and E flat, that strengthens your embouchure. But Flugel is going to weaken it if you just play mostly Flugel. What do you guys think about that?
He never met Chuck Mangione. I tell you, I was asked to do one of his, I don't even remember the song now. It was maybe it was Feel So Good. Solo with the junior college. And I said, okay. I'm thinking like Chuck Mangione, sort of like Kenny G, who cares, you know? And so they gave me this transcribed solo. And the first time I played through it, I was spent. It was like, how does he do it? Because he's going up to like, you know, C's and D's above the staff. It doesn't sound like that when he's playing because it sounds so effortless. But it was really, I had to scope it out, where you're going to push, where you're going to hold back, what you're going to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't make it through. I think probably what your teacher's referring to is the tendency, because of the deep funnel cup, to roll out your lips. And when you start rolling out, it's over. So you have to really concentrate on and holding your embouchure firm to get through that. I don't know. It's now like the Bobby Shoe Yamaha Flugel. It's called the 635T when I bought it. And Chuck was playing the 731. It's huge bore. It's like, I'm thinking like, I barely got through it on my medium bore. I don't know how he did it on his large bore Flugel.
Wow.
You know, it's so I mean, yeah, different instruments, and I think you have a tendency to play all loose and saggy and uncontrolled when you're playing Flugel, get that nice fuzzy sound. But
yep. Yeah, I think that what I warn students sometimes about is, don't go to Flugel to try to get your nice warm sound. Learn how to play with a warm sound on all of your other instruments.
Yeah,
you're going to sound even better on Flugel, because so many people just want to play it on Flugel because you're going to get that really deep, dark sound. And even people who play trumpet badly, I think they always sound better on Flugel for a variety of reasons. But yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's go to the opposite end. What is your technique for working on Piccolo? Our favorite.
Joe, you're probably the better Piccolo player of all three of us, actually. So
look, you guys are putting me on the spot. Didn't we already establish that I would be a lousy teacher? I mean, look, here's the thing. I can't tell you because I don't know. I just know that I practice the Piccolo trumpet right in college. Oh, did you guys go? There we go. Sorry, I'm touching the computer and it all went kablooey. So, you know, I bought a Piccolo trumpet, or I should say, my mother bought me a piccolo trumpet. I do not want to take credit for that because I'm sure she didn't have the money for it in high school. And I basically went to the library and they had these books that would be all 3 trumpet parts for everything that Bach ever wrote, or all 3 trumpet parts for everything, Handel ever wrote.
Oh, those old excerpt books?
They were complete parts. There'd be first, second, and third on each line, and you'd go through the whole like Easter oratorio, right?
Were they read?
And I don't think of it any differently, because to me, once you hit that that sweet spot where it just feels good, the resistance is right, you're not doing it here, it's all here and here.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel, I don't want to say it doesn't feel different, right? But I mean, like, I don't, the standard trumpet player and guy answer, I don't think about it a lot. I don't think about things a lot before I do it. Maybe.
Well, you know what, Joe? Here's what I've learned. I think the people who don't think about it a lot are the ones where they already have a really natural approach. So they don't need to think about it. They don't need to go analyzing everything because things are already working. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I think that you're going to get a much more useful answer out of Larry or Tom on that one, because honestly, I just play it a lot because I enjoy playing,
Well, before we talk to Larry, Joe, I want to say, first of all, I can't believe you had a piccolo in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, Ed Jackson, my wife, Kim, and Chris Castellanos, if it wasn't for those 3, I'd be homeless or living in a van down by the river or whatever, right? I mean, they had high expectations. And I did not want to let, especially my future wife, down, and then or Chris or Ed. And I mean, I enjoyed playing it. It was the first couple of years that school was in existence. So Ed Jackson actually went out, spent some school money to buy a piccolo trumpet for the school, and I was just determined to make that thing sound good. And it was a weird, I don't know. He must have got it on sale. It felt like it was like a piece of PVC with some valves on it or something.
Well, you probably used your big trumpet mouthpiece on it.
Well, you know what? I use the same mouthpiece. I use a 1.5C when I play piccolo trumpet.
Piccolo, that's great.
I'm telling you, I go switching mouthpieces, and all it does is make Tom and Larry crazy, and it doesn't make me any happier. So, okay, and and I'll go a slight side tangent real quick. I have this mouthpiece that I've been playing for, how old are we, Larry? Like 20 something years now. Okay. I'm in my first official college lesson with Walt Blanton. He takes my mouthpiece out of my horn, chucks it into the garbage, and gives me this piece that we call the Franken piece. Okay. Ooh. Because it says it's a Bach 1.5C, and then it's got some mystery back bore on it. And I think he and some of his buddies probably got drunk after a gig and started cutting mouthpieces apart and screwing them back together until they found something they liked. And I have spent the last 20 years just trying to find a mouthpiece that I could like replace that with in case I ever lose that mouthpiece or something. Yeah. And it's just been torture for Tom and Larry. So I just don't switch mouthpieces. That's the answer. So.
All right, Larry, what were you going to say about pick?
Pick, I think pick more than any other instrument. I have to know where I'm going because I will tend to over crescendo or over decrescendo or what. If you know where you're heading to the end of the phrase, then your airflow is going to be perfect on pick, and you won't kill your embouchure with too much or too little air or something along that line. You'll actually be able to measure it out, but you got to practice playing slow and soft and long phrases and know exactly where you're going on pick. Otherwise, you're going to die all the time.
Yeah.
All the time on pick. So Walt teach me just to play arpeggios really soft all the way up to F and just da bom 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 and hang on there for a long time. And he said, if you do that every day for a week before a pick gig, you'll be fine. Sure enough, it is totally true. If you do that every day for a week, you're going to be fine. You play some long and slow. Just know where you're heading, know what the notes sound like. You'd be great.
Interesting. All right. I'm going to try that out. See how that feels.
Yeah.
All right, Tom.
I took a lesson with Jack Burt during the pandemic on pick. And he said, go ahead and play something. And I started playing whatever it was. And he goes, okay, now blow half the air of your lungs out. And I'm playing again. He says, blow another half out. And he said, so I blow some more out, and he says, you got to sip the air. You know, he says, you're playing like a lead player. You can't play pick that way. If you go aggressive at it, it's going to stop. So he said, you guys take. He says, you'll see me play like he's doing the Brandenburg. He said, you'll see me fake breathe. He said, what I'm doing is I'm letting air out.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I got too much air in. And he was like, the trumpets don't sound. He said, which I already kind of figured out because I had to do it a bunch of times. He says, like, I played like basically the first half of the page on one breath, but I put breaths in and I'm usually letting stale air out. I'm not inhaling anything. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I just, after so many years of like going for it on high notes, I see a double G written on pick. I play it like I play it on a B flat and I can't stop.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing.
So I learned this teaching at UNLV because I have a lot of DMA students who come to me and they're coming from a big jazz background. A lot of them have, and they're phenomenal players. But every single one of them, when they get onto Piccolo, are overpowering the instrument. It's just like they're going at it like they go for high notes, like you just said. And they have to learn how to not fight the instrument. And the way to not fight the instrument is just to back way off and take, like Jack was trying to tell you, a teacher that told me, James Thompson, taught me to just take a speaking breath and play. Because I had to play Maslanka Symphony No. 4 with Eastman Wind Ensemble. And it's got that huge piccolo solo. You sit there for about 25 minutes and then you have to play a high D on B flat pick, muted, soft, and you're the only thing playing, and you just play these 16th notes. And I had to just learn, just trust this technique, take a speaking breath and play. And I nailed it every single time. But it is scarier than all get out because we never know what's going to happen when we pick the trumpet up half the time. It just feels like it's, you could fall flat on your face or you might really make it. You never know. But if I did that, I always made that note. So yeah, that's so true, Tom. I totally understand that. That's really interesting. Was that lesson with Jack virtual?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
I did it with him. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, we probably should be winding down soon, but I've got to ask this: how many trumpets do each of you own?
Dom probably wins.
Larry, how many do you own?
I got one of each. That's it. I got the functional trumpet, and that's about all I've got. I don't have backups. I don't have a lot of.
Okay, so you have a B flat.
I got a B flat, a pick, and a flugel, and that's about all I need.
No E flat?
I don't have an E flat. I don't have a G. I don't have an F. I don't have anything like that.
Do you have a rotary?
I do not, because Beethoven, the lovely Beethoven, Mozart, all this, the field hardly ever needs me to have any kind of rotary, and anything they would ask me to play rotary on, those guys didn't write for three of us.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't really till the late 1800s we started seeing three trumpets and stuff.
Right.
Like Mozart's Requiem or something random. So I rarely need to. So luckily Tom owns like 7 of them, and I just borrow one every time.
All right, Joe, how many trumpets do you own currently?
So I'm sorry, I should have been adding up while. Let's see, I don't know. I got B flat, a C, pick, and flugel. Then I have that first Severinsen model gets in B flat from when I was a kid that I still love it. I just like getting it out and being silly and playing loud and high, and it's glorious. And then I have the rotary C. I've got a rotary E flat D, and then maybe that's it. I think I sold my old Bach to a kid in the son of the English horn player in the symphony because he needed a good horn.
Oh wow!
So actually that's it. So I don't have that many. So but we're gonna all need to put our hands up for Tom to count. How many.
Okay. All right. Before we go to Tom, because Tom's probably going to win, I have 2 piston Cs, 1 rotary C, 2 B flats, different mod. One's a Yamaha, one's a Bach, a flugel, an E flat, and E flat D, and then my piccolo B flat A. So that's 8 trumpets. But if I count my daughter's C, which she doesn't play, that's another C trumpet here. So that would be 9. Oh, and then I've got my Yamaha C Piccolo. I forgot about that. I've got a C Piccolo, that long bell C Piccolo.
That's fun.
So I guess I have. I guess it's like 10 trumpets. All right, Tom, you go.
Here goes.
Shoki B flat, Bach B flat, Yamaha New York B flat, Yamaha Zeno B flat, Allegro pocket trumpet,
Oh,
a Dylan pick, a Shoki pick, a Yamaha Flugel, a Dylan Flugel, a Trevani rotor, a Bach rotor, two Wyman rotors, a Shoki DE flat, and a Stouffer DE flat.
15.
And
a partridge in a pear tree.
16 there, man. 16.
Tom, where's your Baroque trumpet?
I'm Baroque. I can't afford one. I was going to buy one from Shelky, because I guess the guy that makes the Baroque trumpets, they joined together, Shelky. And I thought, I call him up, and hey man, I got all these Shelky trumpets. I really like the horns. I'd like to try one of your Baroque trumpets. And he goes, well, you can try coming to Chicago and you might have one. I'm going like, well, how much are they? They were like $4,500. I'm going like, well, it's, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing Chicago, but I like to play the horn. Can you send one out when you make one? No. And so they kind of stopped the pursuit of it. You know, Tony Scodwell had made a D natural trumpet, and I picked that up. And then that was the determining factor why I didn't go for any kind of a old Baroque style trumpet. Is I couldn't find my butt with both hands on that horn. I just could not make any note come out I wanted to.
Yeah, you want to talk about something that's completely different, because our teacher Walt had one or two of those, and I felt like I got pretty good on it, you know, at one point. And then we tried to play something with the chorus, some Bach, maybe it was the Magnificat or something, and that lasted about 5 seconds, because that is just such a completely different, you know, I mean, it's like, I feel like, you know, you need to go interview Justin Bland, you know, like that guy, he's got that down, you know.
We had Justin talk to the studio before the pandemic. It was a really great class. He came in and did a master class and worked with everybody. It was great. It was really good. What were we going to say, Larry?
Well, I said he zipped through town for a couple of years, I think, but he's phenomenal.
Yeah, he is. He's great. I love Justin. He's fabulous.
Yeah, he's got that natural trumpet thing down. That seems like that would have to be what you do only, maybe.
Well, yeah.
Or not only, but you know,
right.
You'd have to commit a significant amount of time to sound good enough to bother.
Yes, but that's also what was told to me about Piccolo trumpet. You really got to just dedicate time. Someone actually told me you should just play Piccolo. Like, that's never going to happen.
More fun.
That little beast. Yeah, we spend our lives trying to conquer that thing. All right. How many trumpets? What do you still want to own that you don't own yet? For me, it's a natural trumpet. I want a Baroque trumpet, but do you guys have anything? Or actually, I want a Weimann rotary. That's true. Yeah. Okay. Both.
I think Joe and I have the same trumpet in mind.
What?
Schagel Berliner Piccolo.
Yep. I want one so bad, and they just, as soon as they come in, they're just gone, you know? So.
Are you going to do ITG?
I want one of those Gaunch horns so bad.
Me too. I want a Gaunch horn too.
Are any of you guys going to go to ITG? Because it's in San Antonio this year. You could try out some trumpets and come back with a few.
I don't think my wife would let me go if that's a possibility. If I could go and come home with more trumpets, I don't think that's happening.
All right. One last question. What is the weirdest mute you own? I will go first. Someone told me I should get this and use it as a mute because it would come in very handy, put some corks on it. I've never done it, but someone told me you should have this. So I have this, but I've never used it. But the other one that's very sad that I keep is this 86. It's called the Model 86. It was made in Houston, Texas by this guy. I can't remember his name. But our dog was young and she chewed
Oh.
This was an $85 mute. And this was years ago in the 2000s. and she chewed it, and it was so tragic. But I keep it because, first of all, I loved her, and I just keep this as a funny little story. It makes me feel close to her, even though I was really irritated at the time because she ruined this mute. All right, you go. Larry, what do you have?
So I don't know if I have any eccentric mutes, but I do have to say that I have a Harman brand Harman mute, the red and white one. And I will tell you that none of those, the stems never fit. The stems never fit in any of them. So I have the one that I actually have to hold the stem in, but it also comes with "F.U. Larry" written on it. And Tom Snow, who I played the Phantom of the Opera show with here at the Venetian for so many years. And so that we used that Harman mute in the show. So I bought that specifically so I could match with him. And then he came in big red marker and wrote "F.U. Larry" on it. And so that for the run of the show. And it's basically faded off now, but it's still there very faintly if you can see it. So
Does it give you a lot of warm fuzzies when you see that?
Oh yeah, you feel great.
All right, Joe, what about you?
Okay, so I'm going to say two things. So I think it's not necessarily strange other than the paint job that's on it, but I just recently broke down and bought one of those Trumcore Harman mutes, but I got the Doc Severinsen one. So mine's lime green with like those Mexican sugar skull things painted all.
Wow.
I'm just waiting for the ridicule that Larry and Tom will give me the first time I actually busted out on a kid. But I like it anyway, and screw those guys. but I will say the mute that I want that I never was able to get my hands on was Tom already mentioned the name Tony Scodwell. For the longest time, he made a mute, and it was red and white, looked like an old stone line, kind of a straight mute, kinda. But it was the Flask. I don't think there's any tactful way. So you'd be back there with your Scodwell mute, and taking look. I have never done this because I don't have one of those mutes, but. But I hear stories of the guys back in the days, so I don't know.
No surprise there. All right, Tom, what about you?
Well, I got a lot of mutes, but they're all pretty much standard. The only one I think that I've gotten a lot of ridicule for, and actually I've convinced Joe to get one, is a plastic Mutech straight mute. And it plays great. There was a trumpet professor at UNLV before you, I forget it. What was that guy's name? Darren something?
Well, Darren Obrecht.
Yeah, that was the guy. So he was conducting the brass band. I came to play a solo with the brass band, and I had that mute, and he says, "Get out! You can't play with that." Oh. And to me, we did that Contreras piece and used the mutes on the premiere of the Contreras piece last week. They sounded freaking great.
Wow,
it's insane. It's like an $8 plastic mute or something like that.
Can you still get this thing? Is it available?
Oh,
yeah.
All right, you got to send me the link. Mutech?
Black plastic straight mute. Look, it's not the greatest straight mute in the universe, but for $8, it is like amazingly outstanding. And
I'm going to get this thing.
Yes.
Biggest harmonic trumpets endorsed by P Trumpet. It's happening.
Right, there you go. I mean, listen, if you're playing softer and it's just like little, whatever, it's nice and buzzy. It sounds good. The pitch doesn't get weird. I mean, it is outstandingly amazing for $8 or whatever.
Wow. All right. That's good. That's excellent. That is a great closing tip. I'm going to look. So can you buy this thing online?
I think I got mine on Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My husband will never complain about me spending $8 on a mute ever.
I want to try. They make a Harman, and I'm really tempted just to buy that. I had to take out a second mortgage to buy the Charlie Davis Harman, which I use because it sucks. Excuse me, Charlie. But I thought
you're gonna get a horse head in your bed. You better watch out.
Exactly. I think it's like a $20 Harman mute, and it's the same thing. It's injected molded plastic, and I bet it plays great.
Wow.
I don't know. But
if you get it, let me know. That's cool.
Okay.
Wow. Well, you guys, thank you so much for doing this. Your checks are in the mail. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot. So this has been really, really great. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to suck up any more of your time because we've been on it for an hour and a half. So have a good rest of the week, and I'll send you the link to this thing when I get it ready.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to see an official play test of the mute when you get that too. That needs to be a whole like mute review.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. The Mutech plastic mute. Absolutely.
There you go.
Maybe I'll try the Hartman too.
Unless it sucks, and then we don't want you associating Tom and I with it.
Yeah.
No, then it's going to be Tom and Joe recommended this thing.
Are insane.
Not only does Tom and Joe recommend it, David Bilger does.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
There you go. Now there's legitimacy. It's real.
Oh.
Wow. That's got.
He doesn't really recommend that. He likes the Mutech, whatchamacallit, Shastok mute, the solo tone.
Oh, okay.
But,
Wow. All right. All right, you guys. Well, thanks so much. Have a good rest of the week.
You too.
All right, you too.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.